Hello, everyone. Dr. Nikhil Verma here with another episode of Things I Didn't Learn in Med School. Um, this episode may not make me a lot of friends. Might make some people turned off from me, especially on the industry side, but I think it was something important that I wanted to get out there. Um, but I want to start with another common theme that was going on throughout the past week or week and a half that I found super interesting based off the books I'm reading, based off the podcasts I've listened to, based off of um, some conversations I've had. And this all comes down to, finding your life's purpose and finding a life's purpose. And it's kind of all related to Arthur Brooks's book, The Second Mountain. Um, I jotted a bunch of notes here on the screen. It's something I usually don't do, but I put a bunch of notes down because I want to keep my thoughts a little bit more linear this time instead of just going off the cuff. And in that book, he discusses, and in the common theme of what I've seen around is the first part of our lives, we're very externally oriented with our goals. It might be about making our parents happy or trying to fit in a community and trying to fit in our spiritual or religious community. It could also be trying to impress somebody, whether that be a teacher, a guy, a girl, a coach, whatever. It's a lot of external grasping for these things. And that kind of takes you up through college into your early career. And all this helps us to drive and motivation of get good grades, go to a good college, get a good job. But at a certain point, people kind of hit a midlife crisis of sorts or an existential crisis or second guessing of themselves. And this is where that kind of starts to shift into the second mountain, or as he likes to call it. And this is more of a internal drive of going out there and putting a purposeful message and meaning to the world and making things better, whether that be for yourself, so you can reach a higher spirituality, calmness, freedom, whatever you want to call it, or you're doing it for a child or your family members, or you're just doing it because you want to make the world a better place. And that around that time frame, when you switch from it's all about me and my success and I'm going to prove everyone wrong into this, I want to make this world a better place. I want to leave things better. I want to positively influence people. Things start to look a little bit different. That's when you start to understand that the struggles that you're going through are worth it. And that the reason why is the potential output on the other end. Admittedly, I'm not there yet. And as many times as I try to remind myself of this, I don't know if anyone actually gets there fully. I'm sure there are people that say that are. But it's like an internal drive. And I want that to be my moral compass of how I direct my life. And all this has a point, and it does come back to what I want to talk about today. But it's a good jumping off point to talk about. Sorry for the delay. I'm just trying to gather exactly how I want to produce this, even though I have the words over there. I think let's just kind of dive into it because I feel like that's going to be the most comfortable way to do this. So, at first, I was thinking about putting this topic out there of really bashing and going hard on industry and stuff. This all makes sense. Explain why in a second here. But I kind of sat back and thought about it, and I looked at it from a different scope. And ultimately, this is what I came down to. And first and foremost, I want to say I don't find industry necessarily evil. I don't necessarily find pharmaceutical industries evil. I do think there are certain bad players in those organizations. I think some bad players have too much say, and I think that trickles down to physicians and to nurse practitioners and the healthcare system in general. I don't think it's all bad, all good. So I want to make that clear first off. I also don't want to bash any individual company or industry. Everybody is trying to make the world a better place in their own minds. whether that be with certain devices or certain medications, or some people's only job is a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make them as much money as possible. So they, whatever world or scope they live in, they think that that's the best value of the system. And that's the reality. That's the reality of the capitalistic world that we live in. And I'm not hating against it. I'm a little bit more aware of that. I'm trying not to be harsh because I am aware of that. But the concept that made it interesting and what kind of got me thinking a little bit was certain device companies set up with mentors for residents, fellows, students, and all that stuff. So, and one of these device companies flew out a bunch of residents and fellows to a training course where they were providing mentorship, and these mentors were there as well, teaching the course, teaching them, giving tips and pointers, harping on this mentorship, right? So I think I want to start out by saying is maybe I was a little bit harsh on them because maybe I feel jealous that I wasn't one of the ones being invited. I'm not deemed worthy enough in their eyes for that kind of thing. And I realize that's a mistake and flaw in my own thinking, my own problem. So I wanted to take a step back from that and kind of understand maybe where this is coming from, and then reorganize my thoughts to, instead of just attack the company or attack those physicians, try to give it from my perspective of how I see it and how I view it. And hopefully this will help those medical students and residents and fellows, and even if you're in industry, helps you understand kind of what's going on. So I think none of these people are doing anything wrong, but the steps along the way are a little bit disingenuous. So first off, these thought leaders in the field quite often are paid by these exact same companies to give speaking gigs across the U.S. Or to go to these training courses. You would like to think that these mentors did this out of the goodness of their heart, and they might have, and I'm not bashing on them. They probably do have a strong drive to teach, otherwise they wouldn't do what they're doing. But they're also being incentivized pretty handedly. And anyone out there can look this up on openpayments.com. You can search the physician's name that gave you teaching and just see how much they got paid for being there for that weekend. And you can buckle it down to the date if you want to. I encourage you all to go look up my name, Nick Oberma, MD, on openpayments.com. I've been very open about where I get my payments and what it is. Mostly for me, it's been weekend conferences, no speaking gigs. I haven't been invited to do a teaching course, and anything I have been, and I've never got paid to go to a conference. There's been some smaller meetings that I've been invited to, but I was still responsible for most of my stuff. Airfare, food, fine. And I'm fine. I am not blaming any of these physicians. I think they should be compensated for their time. I do think it's important. The disingenuity comes when it's masked behind, we're doing a good thing for you as students and fellows and residents. So now these fellows and residents are there, or young physicians are there. They're like, oh my gosh, first off, I want to be treated like these guys, get invited out, get paid, and all this stuff. So therefore, they start using only that device or only that company. And not only that, is if this mentor was locked in to that community, into that device, and he or she now has a mentee that came to that same training, in the medical field, I feel like that's just a little bit of not allowing freedom of thought and freedom of character and freedom for judgments and freedom of how to make analysis. Now, I completely agree. In other fields, we'll just use Wall Street and the business finance world as a prime example. Quite often, you get paired up with a mentor in that same department or field and coach and all that stuff. So I can see where people can defend it and be like, no, this happens everywhere. But I don't know, maybe call me old school. I feel like physicians should hold their morals and ethical values higher and to really grow after how do we make medicine better in a totality and not just get locked onto one thought process. The way I like to think about it is I have mentors for different seasons of my life. I have fantastic mentors starting med school was a hard time for me because I didn't have it. But as I got into residency, I had some great mentors. They did serve a purpose. They got me in the right direction. I got to fellowship. I had fantastic mentors. They served a purpose. They've taken me to the appropriate steps. They're still mentors to me, and I can still reach out to them. Any of these people. But now it's like the next step. So I know this because I was picked out by one of these companies to set me up with a mentor, right? They set up an hour-long call. They want to do it every month. So I'm like, great. I'd love to talk to this individual. He's obviously has success. He's in a situation that I'm not in. He's a very successful pain physician. So I'm like, great. So we sit down. This was during COVID. We had a Zoom conversation. First off, he seemed not interested at all to talk to me. He just like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. There's no flow of a conversation. There's no honesty. And then it started thinking, he started asking me these very specific questions about my practice and my vision. And he's like, oh, you'll never make it. You got to do this. You'll never make it. You got to do this. You'll never make it. You got to do this. And I'm just sitting there like, this guy knows nothing about me. He knows nothing about my training. He has no idea what my vision is compared to his vision. And I started thinking, it's like they were pushing it so hard because he's getting paid to sit here and talk to me. So, and there's nothing wrong with getting paid. I think if you're going to get paid, but do it in a sincere manner. Do it in a motivational manner. And I mean, that's something I'm struggling with now, finding mentors in this space. And it's a partial me problem. I'm not feeling comfortable enough to reaching out to some of these providers that have successful practices. And I've started to do that. I've let my guard down. I let my ego down. I said, hey, I'm struggling with this. What would you do in this situation? And shockingly, they're more than receptive. They say they are giving me their undivided attention, time that they could take out elsewhere, go somewhere and get paid. But no, they are taking one-on-one time to spend with you. And that's my true thought process of what a mentorship should look like. And on top of that, it works on both of our schedules. I make myself more available for them, obviously, but that's how it should be, right? I have to make myself available for the learning process. So coming back to this conference or this event that they had, and it's like, they're really harping on this mentorship, but the interesting part, as I talked about, is like these individuals are the same individuals that are getting taught, they're getting invited to speak all across the US for different conferences, different meetings, different training courses. And the funny part is, to me, it's the same 15, 20 people of all the devices, of all the companies, of all this and all that. It's the same people. Now I thought about this really hard. And I said, you know what? I get why it's the same people. It's a true person that's proven themselves that they can cause waves in any device or any industry within reason. So why wouldn't you just use the same individuals? And that makes sense to me, right? Completely fine. But there's no individuality. There's no room to grow from a position that I'm in from an independent practice standpoint of, hey, we want to bring you in, because if you're not already part of that tight circle, it's really hard to get in. It's really even hard to get a conversation with some of these individuals. And for the right reason. They're fantastic physicians across the U.S. They're brought in for very well reasons. They have a lot of experience. They have a lot of people that follow them. So, it is a hard time to sit down one-on-one with them, but this is the reality of it. And to break into that is very difficult. You hate to say it, but it's like a boys and girls club of exclusion. You're only invited in. And then at what cost, and I do question the cost at sometimes. Neuromodulation is a $6 billion company in 2021, and it's projected to be $14 billion by 2030. it's undoubtedly the future. It's undoubtedly here to stay. And I'll talk a little bit more about this towards the end of this lecture. But this is why these same companies use these same physicians. But it's kind of a self-feeding loop that we bring these physicians in, we give these physicians more money, they do the same research. They do research for us. We publish them. We invite them out to go teach this new research. And it's just the same cycle and circle over and over again. And then what happens is some of these mentees, hey, my mentee helped me with this paper. Let's get them in. And then the cycle circles. And listen, that's great. I think it's a great way to leverage yourself. I don't think it's necessarily a wrong thing, but I always question, are we doing this for the right reasons? Are we doing it the right way? And my colleague, Jim Eubanks, probably one of the most ethical individuals that I've come across on social media and how things work. Like, they took a huge meta-analysis of random control studies, of a meta-analysis of RCTs, and from 2016 to 2020. And it was 7 different spine journals for that time, 5 years. And they started looking at the numbers. Most diseases we know of the spine are impacting elderly people. And we know that. The most common, men, female, in their 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, sure. But if you went back and looked at some of the PubMed data, the average was way younger. Go back to one of your favorite articles and go back and look at the inclusion-exclusion criteria. And it will blow your mind, because I did this with a couple. I'm like, this is not the patients that are walking in my office, my clinic. They found, actually, out of the only 186 trials of the 26,238 patients, they found only 4.8 trials could be applied to the average age of 75 years old. So these patients are getting excluded because of age, because of other comorbidities, et cetera, et cetera. But it's funny because my colleague, love her to death, very intelligent, but always harps, I'm all about the data. Always show me the data. Okay, great. I'm with you. I love data. I think it's the most important thing. Let's look at it. And I'm giving you data right now with these different numbers. But it's interesting because all the data that she acquires are from these fancy dinners that she goes to, or when her friend of the rep comes in through her office. And the data that's being presented to them is from that company that paid or either helped pay for a fund to study, or they have this certain speaker on their payroll for conferences and stuff. And this is where their data came from. And it's the truth. And I was at a training course 2 weekends ago, sitting down at dinner, and this is the exact conversation I had with the territory manager and the regional manager and the other physicians on the table. And we all agreed. Even the device company agreed with me that it's a little bit weird. But what do? That the same people that are getting paid the money are teaching the courses, this, and that. Like, there's a little bit of disingenuous stuff here going on, right? Again, I could see this as me being jealous, but I also, my whole MO, as much as you know, I like to call it how I see it. I'm not necessarily a conspiracy theorist about this, because again, I think there's value in all of this. I do. I really do. And I don't think that only certain individuals are persuaded by this. I have been persuaded by this by millions of different ways, and I've been burnt by it several ways in the past few years. It doesn't only affect individual practices like my friends. How it probably factors into some of the orthopedic practices out there as well. It factors into hospitals. Like, all this stuff is really just very interesting stuff. And, I'm not, again, discrediting industry. I'm not discrediting the physicians. I'm not even blaming the fellows. I think it's important for you to realize that, and especially realize that in yourself, if this is something that you're going to sign up for and want to be a part of, to hold on to your integrity of what true data means and question the data. It's not going to make these companies go away from you. me doing this right now is probably making a lot of companies not want to talk to me. A lot of hospital systems, all that stuff. I know it, and I'm fine with it. But if I'm sitting down at a conference or a meeting, I will ask these questions because these are the questions that are important. This is clinical data. Again, we just talked about this. STEM is a $66 billion and it'll be $14 billion. Just think about how much money that is. I mean, that is so much money. And there are practices that are entirely built around neurostim. They're advertising neurostim. They're putting in stimulators on everyone after 1 or 2 failed epidurals. And it's not just stim, it's other devices too, because we have some gray area of codes and they're getting pretty significant reimbursements. So here is my word of caution for that. This is not sustainable. The U.S. government, the CMS, is not going to continue to put up with all this neurostimulation stuff. We're seeing it currently with RFAs. It's getting harder and harder to do a radiofrequency ablation. A procedure that I don't necessarily believe is the best option for patients, but it works. And it works for a lot of patients. And it's very minimally invasive. And it helps a lot. It's a great procedure for the right patient for the right time. We've seen just recently, just this week, CMS has said no more SI joint radiofrequency ablation. It is experimental. There's no evidence. Yet in the same month or 2 months, they've approved sacroiliac joint fusions posterior. And the codes they're evolving new codes. So, and I believe in SI fusion. Again, the right patient, the right problem, the right time. SI RFA, the right patient, the right time, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they're too sick. Sometimes they're not able to get that surgery. Maybe they're allergic to the alloys in the or into the fusion device. And talking about fusion is a whole completely different story that I would talk to. But and sometimes it's just arthritis, and it's not instability. All these things matter in the long run. It's important to think about. And the reason it's important to think about is if you're a younger physician, we're going to say, I'm 34, going on 35. If you're around my age, and especially younger, be very cautious about what these individuals ahead of us are doing. And not to call all of them out. They're just a few bad players that make it bad for everybody. What's going to happen is all these people are going to get stim. All these people are going to get devices. They're going to come back in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, when they've done all these things and the physicians, our mentors, have left, and now we're going to sit here and deal with the mess afterwards. And I'm not saying this in a draconian matter that this is absolutely like this is the world's worst thing. Stop stim. We should stop it. No. I believe in stim for the right patient at the right time. I believe in these fusion devices. I believe in intraspinal spacers. I believe in just about anything for the right patient at the right time. And this is why it's important for us to keep going to these conferences, going to independent labs, going to labs that are hosted by physicians that may not be on the payroll, hosted by independent societies. You're going to get such a bigger toolbox and such a better understanding of what pain is and how it can help our patients, instead of just putting in these things for money or to try to meet an industry's need so that they ask you to partner and ask you to talk. I mean, that it doesn't sit well with me. And again, that's not what I want to do. I know there's tons of people that do want to do that, and they want to be industry leaders. They want to do that kind of stuff. And I am not discouraging anybody from doing that. I think if that's what you want to do, do it. But, there will be people out there like me that will question your methods and methodologies and bring into question this stuff. I just got off the phone with my colleague about this exact topic. He has done hundreds of stim since his fellowship has completed. His boss, and he scrubbed in with his bosses who have done hundreds of stim. His boss might have done thousands. these patients are still coming back. They still have other problems. So what do? Just keep putting in stims, and well, then what? You put in a device, you do this, you do that. And I don't have a great answer for it. And I don't. And I'm not trying to say that I'm the smartest person alive, that I do, and that I have this all figured out, because I don't. I'm just trying to give you guys my perspective of how some of this is so disingenuous. They feel like if they bring you a patient, you should do the procedure for them, because that's the patient. And I would argue, just do the right procedure for the right patient at the right time. That's what's most important. At the end of the day, the device company doesn't necessarily care about you. And I'm not saying the reps don't care about you. I'm not saying the leadership doesn't care about you. I'm saying as a totality of device company, center, well, whatever. I'm just made it up because there's something I have written down. They don't care if I get paid or not. And this has happened. I did a trial in my office. It was encoded correctly, and we didn't get paid. We sent in all the forms and everything and showed letter of necessity and all the stuff, and still didn't get paid. So the device company, they don't care. That invoice still came to my inbox. I still had to pay on that invoice. And it happens. This is the reality of it. And again, I let my rep know, and she said she's upset about that. She hates when that happens. I said, yeah, no, obviously it's not your fault, but these things kind of do happen. So it's some of this trial and error stuff goes out there. Thankfully, the patient's doing fantastic, and I have not even heard back from her, but she is following up with the neurosurgeon, because the neurosurgeon sent me progress reports. So it's great. The only loss I took there was that I didn't get paid for my time and my services, which is okay. Actually, I had to pay for my time and services, but that doesn't necessarily matter. In the global landscape of things, we're doing the right thing for the right patient at the right time. And not always I'm not blaming the reps either. If they bring you a patient, they believe that this is the right treatment. Sometimes it's an opportunity to educate them. It's like, listen, I think the patient will benefit more from this, this, and this. I'm not throwing this off the table, but let's try some other things first. We shouldn't feel obligated to do that procedure for the patient if we don't feel like it's the right patient, the procedure for them. It kind of wraps up mostly what I want to talk about today. And I want to sum it up. It's like, I've talked about this many times. So the main reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to give out free education, free mentorship, if you will, or free advice, because I just wish I had some of this information before navigating into the world. I hope that you guys use it in a useful manner for yourselves and educate yourself, and hopefully you can benefit more from it and help other people more than I can help more other people, because I think that's what's important for me. I'm still in this really hazy period of my life where I'm balancing out being successful for these external reasons, satisfying some sort of need that I don't really know is there or what I'm actually trying to achieve for, but also understanding that a lot of what I'm doing is trying to do for the better good of individuals and better good for the patients out there, the people that need the care the most. And that doesn't necessarily mean that getting compensated for these kind of things is wrong. That doesn't mean, again, device companies are wrong. It doesn't mean the industry is wrong. It just means that I am doing and have been doing a complete examination of my life for the past 6 months, but longer. And every day brings up new challenges, new questions, new thoughts that I have. I have this platform to be able to use it, which is great. But it's not always, cookie cutter dry. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood. Sometimes I'm in a good mood. But at least I have some ideas to spread out there. And I hope these ideas are useful for people. Yeah, it's been a great interesting challenge for the past 6 to 8 months for me. I had a colleague, she reached out to me and saying, like, I can see in you your internal turmoil that you want to be successful, you want to do this, but you also do want to do the right thing at all times. And I'm not saying I'm doing the right things at all times. That'd be very egotistical for me to say that. I believe I am, based off of what I've learned in my past and the mentors that I've had. And this can definitely change, and I'm open for that change.